Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? We're going to talk about a few things in this video. The first thing we're going to go over is Chris's latest blog post, a roadmap for an honest investigation. Keyword here being honest. If there are any honest people out there anymore. I'm just messing because I know that there are. And that is the whole purpose, for us to continue to spread the word that there needs to be an honest investigation on the Nicola Bulley case. Chris added something a little bit different to his blog post for those of you who do have true difficulty in reading his blogs, but he did add in a narration of the roadmap blog. And you can listen to him narrate as you read the blog. Just open up the narration piece first and then go back and open up the blog piece. And you should be able to hear the narration while you read along. I think it's much more helpful. So let's jump into this video. I've seen his blog post circulating in areas that hopefully it will get some traction and people will start to see the obvious things that need to be addressed. I would like to say welcome to anybody who is new here. Thank you so much for clicking on this video and taking a chance on a different perspective on what I believe is really going on with the Nicola Bulley case. I want to remind everyone that everything that I say within my videos are my opinion. They are based on my understanding of the information that I have gathered over the last 6 months in studying this case. I do not ask that you share my opinion if you don't agree with me. All I ask is that you have an open mind and allow yourself to take a look at the evidence that I'm showing you and then decide for yourself what your opinion is. To my regular viewers and current subscribers, I just want to say thank you so much for continuing to come back, for your support. I went from telling the story about cases to actually investigating an open case, and it has been extremely time consuming. And at the same time, that is my 2-year-old. My 15-year-old is babysitting while I do this. It doesn't sound like it's going very well. Okay, where was I? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go in there. At the same time, I feel I've built a connection to Nicola, and I desperately want justice for her. From one mom of girls to another mom of girls. I do believe we have a chance to get an independent investigation opened up by somebody completely unbiased, as long as we bring forth factual information as to why it's necessary. We have to steer away from the rumors and just stick to the facts. And there are plenty of facts that give reason for an independent investigation to be opened up. I kind of find this funny because somebody actually called me arrogant in the comment section for saying I only bring up facts. If it's arrogant to want an investigation done the right way, then I guess I'm arrogant. I wouldn't describe myself as arrogant because I'm quite the opposite. I'm always second guessing myself and worrying about how things may come across, because I never want to come across as uncaring or cold or calloused. This is not my first case. This is not my first rodeo. I've been studying crime cases for many, many years, and I do know how legitimate investigations are run. I am not a licensed professional, however, but this case stuck out to me. There was nothing legitimate about this investigation, and all of the red flags since day one, or actually, I should say day 4, when Sally Riley spoke and she didn't know anything about the case or the victim, yet she was making a public statement. She didn't even know how Nikki got to the fields or where she came from. And then all of a sudden, DSI Rebecca Smith, who works in organized crime, is put in charge, yet we're being told no third-party involvement. This was another red flag. Why would DSI Rebecca Smith be put in charge of just a regular missing persons case? You didn't see her working on anybody else's case, did you? And the red flags just kept popping up. We had timeline issues. Witnesses were there and then the witnesses disappeared. The focus on social media when the focus should have been on the investigation. All sorts of red flags just popping up everywhere. And then the inquest came, and to no surprise to me, it was handled unlike any other inquest of its kind. And we got 0 answers from it. In many inquests, when it comes to a mysterious death, there will be a jury. There are certain times when a jury needs to be present And unfortunately for Nicola Bulley's case, because what allegedly happened to her happened on public property, there didn't need to be a jury. This would have been at the coroner's discretion. But because of all the inconsistencies in this case, you would think that the coroner would ask that a jury be present. Because when a jury is present, they are able to ask the witnesses questions about their testimony. It's just more people, more minds thinking and asking questions in order to get to the truth, right? It is clear when it comes to this case, they didn't want to ask questions of the witnesses. It's my opinion that they were all given a script, and the only people that were allowed to ask questions were the coroner and the family attorney, neither of which questioned any of the witnesses in depth. In the last few videos, we talked about things that were quoted in the inquest as part of people's testimony that was never printed in the media at all. Why not? From the beginning, we were given a false narrative from DSI Rebecca Smith, and I have always believed this narrative to be false. Along the way, we have questions that have not been answered. Simple and straightforward questions that deserve simple and straightforward answers. Chris has written up a proposed roadmap for what needs to be further investigated. Answers to these simple and straightforward questions from an independent and unbiased investigator are necessary if we ever want to get to the truth of what happened to Nikki. Chris writes that this roadmap does intentionally exclude members of Nikki's family that are compromised in ways we don't yet fully understand. My interpretation of that statement, and this is just my opinion, I am not Chris, I'm not in his mind. We know that the family is hiding information. We have known this from the beginning. It is why Paul often slips up and says we instead of I. It explains the nervousness and sometimes odd behaviors of the family, which leads me to the very first piece of the puzzle that we need, and that is the full background to why Paul Ansel was instructed to return to his home in Inskip, where he was allegedly met by a police officer after his 999 call, which was placed at 11 a.m. while he was driving to the scene. We know that Paul got in his car and started heading towards St. Michael's, and that on his way he called 999 to report Nikki missing. However, rather than the police meeting him at the bench, they asked that he go back to his home in Inskip, where an officer would be waiting for him. He left the bench area with Willow and all of Nikki's belongings that were left behind, including her phone, which, allow me to remind you, had at that point been tampered with by a few people when they were trying to figure out who the phone belonged to. Why on earth would this have taken place in this manner? When someone goes missing, the typical protocol would be to collect all of the evidence exactly where it was left and not allow any more people to touch it, especially the partner of the missing person. This right away led to speculation that Paul had ample time to mess with Nikki's phone, creating instant suspicion about Paul from the start. Now, the partner is always the first person to be suspected in these instances. So the fact that they allowed him to take those things leads me to believe that they never suspected him. And the reason they never suspected him and why they were able to rule him out so quickly is because they already knew what happened. Lancashire Constabulary needs to answer the question of why Paul was asked to return back to his home with these items immediately. Why was he taken away from the scene and isolated immediately following these events? And we'll get into that in the next video. Puzzle piece number 2. Lancashire Constabulary has yet to give a transparent account of what really led to the hypothesis that was founded on the false assertion of a high-risk missing person. Because the fact is, Nicola was not high risk. Nicola did not have a drinking problem. She had menopause. So what? So does every other woman in the age group is starting menopause. In my opinion, most importantly, we need to know why third-party involvement was never considered. And I can say never considered because if it had been even the slightest consideration, they would have treated that bench area as a crime scene. And even if they screwed that part up, they would have at least considered where the body was found, a crime scene. Especially knowing that after 23 days of searching in that exact area, she wasn't there. And then all of a sudden, boom, she is there. this doesn't deserve to be cordoned off? And then not one person from that day is at the inquest? That is absolutely absurd. Puzzle piece number 3. Lancashire Constabulary needs to provide details of the only original eyewitness account of Nikki that ended up being retracted after just 1 week. The one that was provided by Amanda and her husband, Richard Fife, at 9:15 a.m. on the river path. It is my opinion that this original eyewitness account from Amanda and Richard seeing Nikki at 9:15 a.m. on the river path is more likely an accurate eyewitness account. So why was it retracted? And furthermore, why during the inquest did Richard Fife's statement not match the inquest timeline that was printed by mainstream media? Puzzle piece number 4. Lancashire Constabulary needs to provide the details surrounding the introduction of another eyewitness account of Nikki, which they received on February 2nd from Keith Barlow, who allegedly saw her at 9:10 a.m. in the upper field. This too was retracted. And not only that, Keith Barlow has completely disappeared from the entire scene, not even providing any testimony at the inquest, just completely removed, as if he never made that statement, with no explanation why. Though it was brought up at the inquest that he talked with Penny at the bench and was left at the bench by Penny when she went to make phone calls. Yet no statement from Keith Barlow at the inquest. Why? Puzzle piece number 5. Lancashire Constabulary needs to come forward with the background to a police appeal, also on February 2nd, for Christine Bauman, aka the Lady in Red, who had previously provided this statement to police on January 27th. If you saw the video I did on Christine Bauman, you would know that the CCTV images of Christine Bauman that day were taken by Rupert Fletcher's home CCTV cameras and given to the police by Rupert Fletcher himself. You would also know that Rupert's wife, Anne-Marie Fletcher, is friends with Christine Bauman, as well as Nikki. Therefore, I find it very difficult to believe that Rupert didn't know who Christine Bauman was. Therefore, no appeal was ever necessary to figure out who she was, right? They knew who she was. She walked that route every single day at the same time. So much so that when Chris went to the area, he actually came across her walking her dog at that time on Allotment Lane. And not only that, she spoke with police on the day of the disappearance already. So again, why the appeal? In my opinion, it was a misdirection. It was a look over there moment, and it was one of many. Some other missing puzzle pieces that would be revelational to the case would be interviews. Under caution in accordance with Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984 of the following members of the public: Keith Barlow, Hilary Barlow, Isla Traquair, Rupert Fletcher, Anne-Marie Fletcher, Richard Fife, Amanda Davies, Claire Chesham, Veronica Clayson, and Emma White. Emma White specifically needs to be interviewed in regards to the information relating to Nikki's Fitbit, as well as her Sky News interview from February 4th. It is my opinion that every single one of these people is hiding pieces of the truth. Now let's talk about what needs to be asked and investigated about the discovery of the body. As part of Freedom of Information, we need the driver and vehicle movement log details of Lancashire Constabulary Fleet on both Saturday the 18th of February and Sunday the 19th of February for Beat Patrol Police Car registration number KU68ZCA as photographed by Chris Neal on Rockcliffe Road. We also need Air Support Police Car registration number PO20FUF, also photographed by Chris Neal on Rockcliffe Road. If you have not seen my video, Part 4 Revisited, otherwise known as 4.5, please watch it. That's all I'm going to say. It goes into these plate numbers, and from what I've looked into, these plate numbers haven't actually been registered as police vehicles in a few years. You know how you can go to car auctions and buy old police vehicles? I just wonder who actually owned these vehicles, because they are not active police vehicles anymore. We also need confirmation of the attending Lancashire police officer badge numbers and the identities of the officers who were at the scene on or adjacent to the riverbank between 11 and 3 p.m. on Sunday, the 19th of February. I also told you in my last video that Chris finally did get a formal response from a Freedom of Information request that he made on July 13th. And this was about the helicopters. And that the response was that Lancashire Constabulary hold no information for the tasking directions of helicopter flight requests made for either Saturday, February 18th or Sunday, February 19th, which means Lancashire Constabulary were not the ones who called those helicopters in, which we also talked about in depth in part 4.5. So again, if you have not seen that video, I suggest that you watch it. I will put the link in the description box, and I will try to remember to put it right up here. You can just click on it. There's a little eye on the upper right part of your screen. It will take you directly to that video. Some more interviews, again, under caution in accordance with Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984 of the following members of the public would be Jason Rothwell, Marie Sanderson, Chris Neal, Curtis Arnold, and Inzamam Rashid. They were all there on that day, yet not one of them made any type of statement at the inquest. We also can't forget Mariana Spring, who had significant personal involvement with this case, publishing timely articles and acting as lead presenter on BBC News at 6 the day after the alleged discovery. This incorporated an interview with Oliver Fletcher, who is part of a family whom at least 2 people ought to be subject to police interview. There's also been a lot of talk about Mark Williams Thomas, who allegedly attended the inquest and was live tweeting on location. And I can't help but wonder how he was able to live tweet at the exact same time testimony was being provided at the inquest. In regards to these tweets right here, Penny Fletcher's testimony was between 2:45 p.m. and 3 p.m. Yet all of these tweets from Mark Williams Thomas were posted before 3 p.m. You do recall the very strict rules of the inquest that no phones were allowed inside the inquest. So how was he able to legit live tweet? Was he allowed to break the rules and bring his phone in to be able to tweet Penny's testimony as she was actually giving it? Because he did that, or he was just gaslighting the public, as many of the characters in this charade, and more than likely, he was simply tweeting what was scripted for him while outside the inquest. But what do I know? That's all for this video. Short, sweet, and to the point. I really just wanted to reiterate to the people who either do not subscribe to Chris's Substack or have trouble reading it. I also want to say that while we have been working a bit together, we're also working completely separate. My next video is going to be more about motive. What would the motive for not only the crime, but the cover-up and concealment of the crime be? Over the last few months, I've been looking into motives while exposing the inconsistencies and red flags, and we're going to get into what I believe to be a motive. However, to be fully transparent with you, these are just theories based off of information that I have found to be legit. I think many of you will be very shocked to see how deep this actually runs. Without an independent investigation, this case will certainly be swept under the rug, just like so many others have been and will continue to be. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Please be healthy, be happy, be safe, and most of all, be unapologetically you. Bye-bye.